इंडिया का वाइडेस्ट नेटवर्क।
बिगेस्ट नेटवर्क, ये तो सब कहते हैं राइट।
लेकिन इससे हमारा क्या फायदा?
मेरी लाइफ इजी कैसे होगी?
We hear you। इसीलिए आपकी लाइफ आसान करने एयरटेल वो करता है जो किसी के लिए आसान नहीं। हम आपसे कुछ नहीं छुपाते, खबर अच्छी हो या बुरी, हाँ बुरी भी हम साफ साफ बताते हैं, ताकि आपकी लाइफ में रुकावट ना आए।
चलो जी।
इंडिया का बेस्ट नेटवर्क आप डिसाइड करना, हम रोज बेहतर बनने की कोशिश करेंगे।
Customers from across India and the world have been leaning on us for over 75 years. Blue Star, built on trust.
जब चलेंगे हम, बढ़ेंगे हम, चलेगा हिंदुस्तान, चलेगा हिंदुस्तान, बनेगी नई पहचान। NBC bearings, NBC bearings।
इस बदलते भारत की आत्मनिर्भर पहचान NBC बेयरिंग्स, लीडिंग बेयरिंग मैन्युफैक्चरर और एक्सपोर्टर, मेड इन इंडिया, मेड फॉर द वर्ल्ड, और CK बिरला ग्रुप कंपनी।
Do you know when trade is at its best? It's when you never have to think about it. When it's so convenient that it almost feels invisible. Trade is at its best when it makes getting something, no matter how big or small, from one place to another, feel like handing it over with your own hands. Making the world flow better. A way to make another country feel like next door. To make a stranger feel like a neighbor. To change what's possible for everyone. For us, trade isn't about running ports. It's about opening portals. Portals to millions of people, but also to a better future.
What is care all about? An endearing smile, a soothing touch, or perhaps the comforting reassurance of an honest commitment? At Polymed, for years, our commitment to provide the highest quality healthcare to mankind has run deeply through all aspects of our ideology, decisions, and work. Care, concern, and love for humanity. Polymed was established in 1995 and started manufacturing operations in 1997 with a vision of providing the highest quality of healthcare to mankind. Since inception, Polymed has been on an ever-expanding journey of achievements, marking key milestones year after year. Our values of integrity, care, ownership, learning and inclusivity puts us in a dominant position in the healthcare industry. Polymed as a brand is committed to continually evolve and innovate products that are proven, safe and sustainable. Our innovations are focused not only on creating value today, but also to prepare healthcare for a better tomorrow. Our varied specialities include infusion therapy, vascular access, dialysis, respiratory care, urology, blood management, oncology, gastroenterology, blood collection system, surgery and wound management, and anesthesia. While our technologies are truly state-of-the-art, our business model is state-of-the-heart.
Polymed is now moving towards its new orbit of bringing more products which are close to clinicians, healthcare practitioners.
Our acquisition of Plan One Health, a leading Italian medical devices company, has further allowed us to expand our horizons, adding focus to in-depth R&D for making highly specialized systems. We are proud to say that today, Polymed is one of the leading manufacturers of infusion products in the world, exporting to an array of over 110 countries. We are Polymed, and we care for you. Our drive comes from our compassion for saving lives and building a healthier society, a happier society. Polymed. We care as we cure.
ठीक है, टाइल्स आपको तो वर्ल्ड फेमस फ्लोरिंग लगाना चाहिए। आखिर आपका स्टाइल वर्ल्ड फेमस है।
ऐसे इटालियन मार्बल, इंग्लिश ओक फ्लोरिंग,
एग्जैक्टली।
सोमानी टाइल्स में ये सब फिनिश है। और जैसे कि मेरा वर्ल्ड फेमस स्टाइल देसी है, ऐसे ही है सोमानी टाइल, स्टाइल और क्वालिटी वर्ल्ड क्लास, पर जमीन से जुड़ा।
एक आइडिया है, आपको ना सोमानी टाइल्स लगानी चाहिए।
गुड आइडिया। सोमानी टाइल्स, जमीन से जुड़े।
शर्मा जी, हाँ, कश्मीर घूमने चलोगे? कश्मीर जरूर, पर सिर्फ 2 दिन के लिए। हाँ।
भाई शर्मा जी, इस बार कॉन्फ्रेंस न्यूयॉर्क में रखे?
जी सर, पर सिर्फ 2 दिन के लिए।
शर्मा जी,
जी,
अरोड़ा साहब की बेटी की शादी है बैंकॉक में।
हाँ।
हम सबको चलना है।
क्यों नहीं, पर सिर्फ 2 दिन के लिए।
2 दिन में जब हो जाए घर की ऐसी की तैसी, तभी तो बाहर नहीं जाते बेचारे शर्मा जी। कोई इन्हें समझाए, घर में फिनेस्टा लगवाएं। रेन वाटर, सीपेज, डस्ट, पोल्यूशन और नॉइज से हमेशा के लिए छुटकारा पाएं, क्योंकि फिनेस्टा कीप्स द आउटसाइड आउटसाइड फॉरएवर।
यार, इस बार कहीं लंबी छुट्टी के लिए चले?
Finesta, India's #1 windows and doors brand.
There's a gush of wind that hums a sweet song. There's a gush of wind that fights like a hero to fill the world with possibility. There's a gush of wind that jumps across oceans and mountains, embracing the entire planet. There's a gush of wind that blows away darkness. There's a gush of wind that blows for humanity. Because at Hero, we care. Being a hero is all about heart. It's not about ruling the world. It's about owning it. It's not about winning a race. It's about delivering a smile to the human race. It's about a spirit that just cannot be confined by geographies. It's about the heart that beats for the future and a soul that echoes the values of generations. And yet, being a hero is never about the hero. It's about the millions who celebrate them.
Yes, okay. A very good evening to all of you, and welcome to the session on Marketing Beyond the Great Reset at the CII Business Summit 2022. Today's session, with its highly captivating theme, will attempt to showcase how the marketing function can grow and thrive beyond the so-called Great Reset, while enabling the creation of a future-ready modern marketing organization. We have with us on the panel Mr. Rajesh Ramakrishnan, Managing Director, Perfetti Van Mille India, and Mr. Nitin Pasi, Chairman and Managing Director, Lotus Herbals. Who better to moderate such a futuristic session than Mr. Sundar Madhakrishna, considered a pioneer in data-driven operating models in B2B marketing in India. Without further ado, may I now hand over the session proceedings to Mr. Madhakrishna.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Absolutely. It's always tongue twister, Alpa. Thank you. But thank you for that warm welcome, and love to welcome all the attendees as well as our illustrious panelists, Rajesh and Nitin. So on my personal behalf as well, welcome all of you to Marketing Beyond the Great Reset, which is a part of the CII Business Summit that's been organized by CII here today. It's actually a real honor to be sharing the platform with two very illustrious leaders, and I couldn't think of a more diverse set of industries that they come from, which is fantastic in terms of actually summarizing the entire spectrum of what Indian industry has to offer, and we can get perspectives that really transcend industry borders. As they already introduced, Rajesh Ramakrishnan is the Managing Director of Perfetti, with over 27 years of experience in General Management, Sales and Marketing. Rajesh has time and again proven himself to be an accomplished business leader across a diverse array of categories like personal care, household care, food and beverages, confectionery and media, having worked in household brands such as Hindustan Times, PepsiCo, Marico Industries, and Reckitt and Benckiser. So welcome, Rajesh.
Thanks, Sundar. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Delight to have had you. I am also very pleased to introduce another rising star representing a leading national cosmetics brand, Mr. Nitin Pasi, who is the chairman and managing director of Lotus Herbals. Nitin oversees strategic planning and the business development for the company. He has been instrumental in increasing the revenues of Lotus Herbals by 25 folds within 1 decade, and making it one of the most well-respected Indian beauty brands in India and globally. Under his guidance, Lotus Herbals has expanded rapidly within India, UAE, Oman, Mauritius, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Nepal, and various other countries, serving millions of customers. So, hearty welcome to Nitin.
Thank you very much, Sundar.
So, we've already set the stage, and I wouldn't like to set any more prelude, but get straight into the question that we had in mind for both of you. The first question is really to Rajesh, so which is that given the way successive crises are reshaping the modern consumer, from a real strategic view, what we typically call the 30,000 feet view, how important, in your view, will consumer trust be in all marketing decisions going forward? Any kind of specific examples of what you're doing with your brands to leverage trust as a future competitive differentiator, Rajesh?
Yeah, thanks, Sundar. I think it's an interesting question that you asked. And in my mind, trust is a very, very important aspect of any relationship, and also a relationship between brands and consumers. And to me, trust is independent of what's happening around us in the macro environment. I mean, just because it is raining or the sun is shining, the trust level between individuals don't change, right? That's what it is. And I think similarly, irrespective of what the macro environment is all about, the trust is an important aspect of that consumer-brand relationship. However, I think the point is, when there is a lot of uncertainty around us in the macro environment, what tends to happen is, I mean, that happens to us as people as well, is we gravitate towards people who we trust, right? So in terms of crisis, if you think about it, you have a 4 a.m. friend that you go to, right? And it's exactly the same thing with brands and consumers. So when consumers are grappling with a variety of things happening in the environment, the automatic tendency would be to go back to brands that they trust, what we call comfort brands, right? And therefore, it's very, very important for brands to build the trust element with consumers, irrespective of anything else, because it takes a certain amount of time to build that trust. And that is an ongoing exercise that one needs to do. And I mean, what does trust mean in terms of tangible outcomes? If you look at it, it's really about, am I setting a certain base level of expectations with the consumer? And as a brand, am I living up to those expectations, right? And that's really what. So if I am able to do that, then it builds into a virtuous cycle of trust. Yeah. So just to give you an example, I mean, we operate in the confectionery industry, and therefore, these are products that consumers put into their mouth. So the element of trust goes up even more. I mean, compared to something like a shoe polish, and I have nothing against shoe polish. I've worked on brands like Cherry Blossom, but I'm just making a differentiation, saying that, this is a brand that I consume, or my consumers eat it, and therefore there is a greater responsibility in providing a certain level of trust and confidence on those products. So I think it's very, very important to ensure that, that happens. And somewhere the trust also gets built when you're able to exceed expectation of consumers. So if consumers are expecting certain things from the brand, if I'm able to deliver something above and beyond that, that further enhances and accelerates the trust quotient as well.
Right. So Rajesh, I mean, just a follow-up question, since you mentioned about, and the category that you deal with is a kids category, and you've all obviously handle other categories as well. In your case, do you think this aspect of trust actually gets accentuated even more Not only the kid is someone eating it, just that the person eating it is a kid.
Yeah, I think to an extent it makes a difference. So what happens is, in the case of our category, a predominant consumption is with kids, and therefore clearing the gatekeeper becomes very important, and gaining the gatekeeper's trust becomes very important, right? So the mothers need to feel comfortable that they're giving their kids certain products or brands which they feel comfortable with. So for example, one of the things is, it is, since it's targeted to a wide variety of people, including kids, taste is non-negotiable. So therefore, the product needs to offer a certain kind of taste. The other big driver in the category is variety. So am I able to offer a variety of flavors to the consumers, right? However, in order to get the gatekeepers' trust, we need to see what else can we do to the product. So just to give you an example, Alpenlibe Just Jelly as a product, it's one of the best-selling products, has got 25% fruit pulp in it. So as a mother, one of the things that we realize is, an occasion that is targeted is, if I have to send something for the kid in their tiffin box for him or her to consume at say 11 a.m. in the morning, I need to send something which is tasty so that the kid will eat it, but has an element of health also in it, right? So there is a jelly with 25% fruit pulp in it. So that's an example. Or for example, we have a Juicy Fills candy, which is sold at 1 rupee, which has got vitamin C and fruit juice in it, right? So the trust element becomes important, to your point. And the way to do it is, in this case, how can I get the gatekeeper's trust, so that then that becomes a barrier that we are able to overcome, so that they are able to then, feel comfortable to give it to their children as well.
Absolutely, Rajesh. I think that's very well said. I think I've heard a lot of definitions for trust, but this probably came as a very simple and very easy to understand, the way you defined it. Nitin, I just want to take it from there, and just for your category, Rajesh defined it as setting certain expectations and meeting them. It's a very simple but a very profound and not so easy thing to do, especially when you're looking at a category like that. In your category, right, how have you looked at trust, and how do you sort of want to keep building it and strengthening it as it goes along?
Yeah, I think trust is one of the core pillars of brand building, and Rajesh has summarized it really, really well. In our category, what if you look at the olden days, the disclosures on labels and products, was not very forthcoming. So right now, what we are experiencing is, customer is demanding a lot of transparency from brands. What goes inside the product, what type of packaging you're using, its environment impact, et cetera, et cetera. And I think in the future, transparency is going to be absolutely non-negotiable to build trust for brands in personal care. So I'll give you various examples, right? So in the international markets, there are certifying agencies which certify the kind of ingredient you're using, the kind of sourcing you're doing, whether it's fair trade, whether it's organic ingredient harvested in a certain manner, not using chemical fertilizers, and then, what kind of manufacturing processes you're using, the kind of energy that, you're using, whether it's renewable or non-renewable energy, and then what kind of carbon footprint your manufacturing and your supply chain processes are leaving. So the entire ESG world is coming together, to define, how the customers are seeing, brands in the personal care industry. And probably in the future, you will see some kind of carbon footprint marking on some of the products, in personal care, right? So that is something that, is coming up very, very strongly. And, what full disclosures is one of the things that we are seeing in our industry coming up very, very strongly. And then third-party certification, by credible agencies of whatever we are putting, inside the product and on the product. So definitely, this is something which is rapidly changing, and I think it is going to be absolutely critical for brands, to stand up to what the consumers expect and manage their expectation and go beyond that. I think brands which are able to exceed the expectations will be highly differentiated and will win the trust of the consumers for sure.
Absolutely. Then I just want to stay on, for the question which is also related to trust. Traditionally we've always measured marketing using metrics and saying this is what is meant by the marketing ROI. Now they are very hard-nosed metrics, most of them, because again, then you have to be measuring. And, we all probably come from a generation which spent, our entire career trying to figure out how do you actually measure marketing and what makes sense without overdoing it and underdoing it and so on. That debate aside, what do you think will be the role of softer issues, right? Which you just touched upon, like for example, social and climate objectives. How important are they going to be when you actually measure the success of a brand?
Sure. So I'll break it down into two parts. First is, internal and external, the external stakeholder, which is the consumer, right? I think for the consumer, it is eventually, in the immediate foreseeable future, going to be one of the purchase decision makers between if, the perceived quality and value of two competing brands is the same. If one brand has a better ESG score compared to the other, I think the customer will deviate towards the one which has a better score for sure. That is from an external stakeholder perspective. But let me tell you, even for the internal stakeholders, this is becoming very important. For your employees, for your, suppliers, etc. They are seeing responsible, ESG responsible brands, ESG responsible companies as the ones that they want to work with, So I think from both the perspective, these softer elements, of brand building, will, so far you termed it soft, but I would say that in future they may become some of the critical factors, especially in lifestyle, in some of the products where the consumer is highly educated and is able to, at the subconscious mind, calculate the impact some of these brands have on, say, climate change, air pollution, water pollution, etc., etc. So these will become from, I think, from softer elements to very critical purchase decision making criteria for the customers.
Absolutely, Nathan. So you're seeing that shift happening in own industry, and you're making effort to ensure that that sort of is that's something that you've preserved as you go along. So let me just put the similar question to Rajesh as well. Rajesh, you just heard Nathan talk about how important social and climate issues are going to be. Now, in your category, right? By definition, it's fun, right? So in that category, how do you see this pan out? Because at the heart, it seems to be there, but how does it sort of play out?
So again, points very well made by Nitin, and I'll just talk about two aspects of it. First, I'll answer the specific question you were asking again with a particular example. I mean, if you take a brand like Happy Dent, right? I'm sure many of us would have seen this commercial of a palace commercial of 20 years ago, where the sparkling smiles lit up the path for people and for the elephants and all of that, right? It's a commercial that we have all grown with. And over 20 years, Happy Dent has stood for sparkling white teeth. Yeah. But recently, about a year ago, one of the things that we did was we said, okay, that is a thing that we would like to retain for the brand. But what's the higher order purpose that it can take? And why does that become important? Because today, if you look at it, consumers, like many of us, align to some purpose, right, or a cause. And more so in the youth of today, where they are they feel very strongly about various causes, whether it could be gender equality, it could be environment, it could be energy, and so on and so forth. So I think it's very important for brands to sort of align with a higher order purpose why they exist. And then when that manifests itself in certain ways, then consumers align to that brand and say, this is a brand of my choice. So what we did was we took that same thought forward of Happy Dent providing sparkling smiles to say, can that sparkling smile throw light on issues, which are issues that bother us, right? So the line was, Dika batti si, kar baat achhi si, right? So the commercial that we did showed, for example, two guys sitting in the ladies' seat in a bus and refusing to get up even when a lady came there to take that seat. And then a few people around the passengers consume Happy Dent and throw light on the fact that it's written there, it's a seat for ladies. And so the guys get up and eventually give the seat to the woman. So the point I'm making is, I think even on a fun category like chewing gums and candies, I think if there is a relevant opportunity available, brands can take that higher order position, which really helps them to align with a larger purpose. And then you find that consumers also align with the brand because they sort of resonate with that purpose. So I think that's a very important aspect of brand building, and also to the previous point that you were making about how do you build trust with the brand as well, right? So I think that's one aspect of it. And just to briefly touch upon the other point that Nitin was also making, I think sustainability is gaining a huge amount of traction in today's time. So it could be in terms of carbon footprint. What kind of carbon footprint are you leaving behind while manufacturing products? How much energy do you consume? How much water do you consume? What water do you put back into the environment, and so on? So I think that's very important. And another related part is this whole piece on plastic, right? So how do you? I mean, it's a plastic, for example, is required in our category to to protect the product. I mean, if I have to ensure that the product reaches the last mile and it can go to the length and breadth of the country, I need to protect the product and preserve it by using certain pack material. But at the same time, can I be a responsible corporate to say, can I recycle? Can I put that? Can I reduce the consumption of plastic? Can I take that plastic and put it to good use? So, for example, we have a park in Gurgaon which we have adopted, where all the play material like the swing and the slide and the seesaw is made with recycled plastic. So, which can be molded together and made. So I think there are these various opportunities. These are all small baby steps that we take in that area. But sustainability is, again, becoming a very, very important aspect of marketing as well.
Absolutely, Rajesh. So what I hear both of you talking about is, these are becoming, for example, there was a quality movement, in the 70s, if I may say. But in the 80s, that became like the table stakes. But so therefore, I think from what I hear from both of you is the whole topic about social and climate causes and purposes are table stakes for brands. So brands will have to figure out their own way of telling the story and be authentic. But there is no choice but to actually appeal to a larger purpose that the consumers are actually looking at. So today's teenagers are tomorrow's parents. So they will sort of pass on those that way of decision making further as well. So thanks to both of you for having that answered that question, and very interesting to see how that's manifesting in your companies. Which brings me to another topic, which is in some sense related, but again, it comes with its own opportunities and challenges, which is the future world of marketing. As we are looking at it right now, is heavily reliant on technology. And for instance, what we're seeing as AI-driven, conversational tools and chatbots to interact with consumers. So when you're looking at this, there is a fear that people have, which is that the whole topic about personalized communication and the basic quality of service, which has been so vital to traditional marketing, will that be lost? How do you see this? So let me start again with Rajesh. How do you see this manifest in your company?
Yeah, before I get to my company, I think, Sundar, to the point of technology, if at all anything, I think technology would accelerate mass personalization, right? Because at one level, consumers, brands want to target large swath of consumer, but the other side is consumers want to feel personalized in terms of the interaction that they have with the brand. So that's the dichotomy that you're trying to solve. And actually, technology can really aid in that. I mean, if you take examples like Amazon or Netflix, right? I mean, when you log into Netflix, it already shows you recommended for you. Now, that comes from obviously a lot of back-end data analytics and artificial intelligence to say, oh, I watch these kind of programs. Maybe I have this kind of friends who are watching these programs, and so on and so forth, to say what is recommended for you. Or today, when I log on to Amazon to buy something, it also throws up saying people who have bought this have also bought this, and so on. So these are examples of mass personalization that is happening at a very macro level. So and that's definitely aided by technology. But coming back to our category, again, technology can be leveraged in multiple ways. Just to take an example, we have a brand called Chupa Chups, which is targeted predominantly at teens. And we know that for teens, one of the biggest ways to pass time is gaming. And that's a big deal for them. So what we did was we leveraged technology, we leveraged consumer insights, and we leveraged the product to come back with something which is very interesting as far as consumers are concerned. So we had a QR code on the pack. The teenager scans the QR code. It takes him or her into a game. The game has, product visuals in it to play the game. So in a way, you're integrating the product with the whole gaming experience, and you're leveraging technology to make it come alive for the consumer. So I'm saying there are ways in which you can leverage technology with strong consumer insights anchored in product truth, which can provide a unique experience to consumers, which will make them get strongly associated with you.
Absolutely. So I'm putting a similar question to Nitin. Nitin, how are you dabbling with this whole topic about integrating technology and leveraging it, to sort of further consumer trust and experience in your company?
Yeah, so I think beauty and personal care is significantly leveraging technology, and we also as an Indian BPC company have been using it for last many years in various facets, on consumer facing and also at the back end. I think there's a huge amount of transformation which is going on, and I use the term AI marketing, right? Artificial intelligence marketing. So artificial intelligence marketing is a extremely important function for any marketing department nowadays, right? Whether it's tapping into your keyword searches, social media profiles, or any kind of data repository wherever a customer is having any touch point, and then making use of that for in the shortest period of time, solving some white spaces, and getting into those white spaces which are unmet consumer needs. For us, this is something that we have been doing. So I'll give you various examples. We have 6 brands. At the top end we have a luxury brand. So what we are doing is we are doing very basic personalization with somebody needs to gift her mother a very high end Ayurvedic product for Mother's Day. So it's from basic customization in terms of putting the name to, in the mid level we have a very large brand with a retail universe of 125,000 retail outlets, where we have given, like, we partnered with IPL, where there's a QR code on some of our sun protection products. The customer then logs into our website, solves a certain quiz or something like that, and we are trying to capture the demographics and psychographics of that customer. So we know which geography that customer is coming, we know what kind of temperature that geography is going to be, and then there's targeted communication to the customer from our web store or our social media accounts, right? So I think from our perspective, this is something which is becoming very important. Now, this is what we are doing currently. In the future, I think most of the product formulas will be extremely personalized, and technology gives you that scope to do that. And I'm not saying changing just the labels, I'm saying at the core level, if somebody is, for example, living in Mumbai, if the humidity is very high, but the temperature is very similar to maybe somewhere else in the country, but the humidity is low. So the skincare need is absolutely different. But currently, most of the brands are giving the same formula to somebody who's in Delhi and somebody who's in Mumbai. But that should not be the case, So the hydration needs for the skin will be completely different. And then there are 4 other parameters depending upon the DNA of the skin, so whether it's a pore size, etc., etc. So once that data has been captured, and fed into some kind of an AI, engine, using some machine learning, at the factory end, there can be formulas which are manufactured. So in my calculation, there are close to about 1,200 skincare basic moisturizers that can be made for the Indian market. So 1,200, it's already being done in makeup, in liquid foundation and compact shades. Some of the international brands are now having close to 150 foundation shades to match each skin type or skin shade or complexion color. So similarly, for moisturizing needs, there can be 1,200 types of different permutations and combinations of moisturizers, with at the factory end and to the consumer, this entire engine can do. And imagine you're getting the perfect moisturizing formula for that particular season, which will change every 3 months. So what more, personalized can that be? This is like probably the holy grail of personalization in BPC.
Absolutely. Nitin, you remind me of my earlier days as the brand manager for Close Up when I used to work for Hindustan Levers. And what I was always told repeatedly was that don't add more SKUs. We already have 200 of them. And that was the entire personal products category. And imagine if this is, we got 1,500 different varieties. It's actually fantastic to see, that it's been taken to that level of understanding consumers so well and trying to satiate some of those needs. Coming to another topic, which is, related in some sense, but something that can be, if you ignore it, you ignore it at your own peril, which is that, we are seeing increasing disinformation and fake news, right, on social media, which is becoming a sort of a big pain point for marketers. And so how will the marketers and brands of tomorrow navigate this clutter and convey their message to the end consumer? Because this is a different level of complexity that gets added. So let's start with you, Nitin, about what are your thoughts on how does a marketer actually navigate the clutter and convey the message in the world which is full of disinformation, fake news?
I think this is a real challenge, to be very honest, and most of the brands, have faced this, in the recent past or current or will face it in the future. I think there are various facets to this, I mean, at the macro level, there are regulatory bodies which need to step in. We don't want to curb free speech, but free speech obviously comes with a certain kind of responsibility, right? We don't want to have citizens' voices being curbed, right? There should be extreme freedom, people should be able to express. But when it becomes something which is not, truth, I mean, it's not something real, it's almost borderline fake, then it becomes a problem, right? And then being propagated by vested interests, definitely it becomes a problem for marketeers. I think there are various things, everybody does, online reputation management, which is a very basic thing, but now I think there are algorithms being developed, there's intelligent, software is being developed, which will take any kind of negative feedback over the universe, and populates it in terms of various intensities. So, I mean, that's the basic software. Every brand needs to have that. But beyond that, I think it's also how much good, each brand is doing that you need to communicate to the consumers, So can it solve the fake news problem? I don't think it will solve, but definitely brands can reach out to all the stakeholders, platforms, and as well as the originators of certain information and try to, solve these problems. Can there be a quick fix to it? I mean, I can't think of any quick fix, but I think the domain mostly lies with the regulatory authorities, to curb this fake news, and marketers will be at some receiving end. But if they can have some softwares in their, kitty to, to address this, as well as, their do good agenda should be very much out there. So to a certain extent, this can be, handled.
Absolutely. So you're suggesting we use technology to counter all the technology which is being used to sort of spread fake news. At the same time, you need to have a clear agenda of your own. You need to know what you want to convey, irrespective of what's happening. So Rajesh, the similar question to you. What are your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, technology is a double-edged sword, right? Like Nitin said, there are many advantages of it and how it helps us, but yeah, it can be misused as well, like anything else. So I think at one level, if you look at it, it's like people. No matter, you do a certain amount of good things, there are people who will appreciate you for that. And there will always be people who are, have a negative point of view on that as well. And I think ultimately, the hope and the belief is that the number of people who appreciate and have good things to say about it is greater than the number of people who have, adverse comments to make. And I think it's similar for the brand also. So one of the important things in my mind is, back to the earlier point I was making, the brand needs to have a strong sense of purpose, what it stands for, and make sure that it consistently and visibly propagates that sense of purpose over a period of time. And I think both words are very important words, which is visibly doing it and consistently doing it, right? And that would make sure that consumers look at the brand in a certain way. And the dream of the brand would be, if you have more and more evangelists for the brands, the better. So I think that should be the intent for the brand. Having said that, no matter how much you build that, there will always be some naysayers and there's some people who have a negative thing to say about the brand. And I think active social listening, like Nitin said, leveraging technology to keep our eyes and ears on the ground to understand what's going on, and then making sure that we are able to take the right measures to counter those are critical. But I think the fundamental point would be to build this whole brand on a strong, solid foundation with a deep sense of purpose, which can then, have more and more evangelists for the brand.
Absolutely. So which, brings me to what could possibly the last question. I know this topic is of so much of interest that we could go on and on. But, one thing is about the world of what we now calling it digital, right? So there is for businesses such as traditional retail, they're built on, physical foundations of shops and retails, etc., and needing to migrate to virtual spaces. How would you advise marketers to stop viewing the business in a siloed way and instead integrate them into a larger strategy? So the idea is, how do you integrate the traditional physical world with the virtual world? So if we could start with you, Nitin, and then to Rajesh.
Sure. I mean, this is the kind of world we are currently living in, and then you will have the metaverse coming in the immediate future. Right. So for us, in the beauty and personal care industry, there are a couple of moments of truth. What makes a customer buy a particular brand or adopt a particular brand or buy a particular product. And one of that is sensorials. So it's the feeling of the product. How does she feel it on the skin? When she's trying it. How does it smell? How does it look? When she is applying. Etc. Etc. So that's where the physical aspect comes very important, and we are seeing, the physical world being impacted by technology or the, the kind of things which are available to make the customer decision making much more smoother and much more quicker. And on the other hand, in the physical world, experiential and sensorial things are coming in, and which will, like, if now you have, the 3D and the entire metaverse coming in, right? So which will give a very different perspective and a three-dimensional view to the brand and the product. Except smell, everything else can be achieved. To a great extent, touch can also be achieved, right? So I think this is a hybrid world that we will continue to see. And for us, it's very extremely important that we have an omni-channel presence. And beyond that, we have a very good technology piece at the physical part, of our business. And in the online part also, we bring in some attributes or some sensorial, nuances of the physical world also to the greatest possible extent. So, for example, when we know a customer is buying a sun protection product, can there be a small sample which is an after sun kind of a gel, where the customer is able to experience that product without stepping into a store, So these things, I think, will be extremely critical. And the metaverses will be changing, a lot of things in the physical world. So from 2-dimensional, it will go to 3-dimensional. You can experience the store environment to a certain extent in the metaverse. You can absolutely have a touch of feel, so there are tools available. There's going to be a certain sound. There's going to be a certain experience, which is going to be coming. So at the both ends, there is going to be a lot of technology innovation enabling the ideal digital world for brands.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nitin. Over to you, Rajesh. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, if I look at the confectionery category, it's been pretty much built on largely in the real world, the physical world. Yeah. We are, just to give a perspective, we are available in about 1 million outlets directly serviced by us, and we are actually available in 4.5 million outlets across the country, indirectly serviced. So a lot of it is to do with touch and feel, and people, when just walking the streets, you end up, seeing a confectionery product and picking it up. So it is being built on that. Having said that, of course, the digital aspect is coming in, and that's a reality. And we need to see how the brands can straddle both parts of it. So there are two aspects. One aspect is around the consumer, and the other aspect is around trade. Yeah, and if I were to, or availability, right? So if I look at the trade and the availability part of it, predominantly our sales are currently in the physical world where we directly service these outlets, and that's how the business is done. But having said that, e-commerce, for example, is picking up in a pretty significant way, because thanks to COVID, consumers have started shopping a lot in that channel. Unfortunately, category like confectionery is under indexed currently in that because of the kind of price points we operate in, etc. But there, the challenge for us is to provide consumers with experiences which they would not get otherwise. So, for example, if there is Halloween, which is happening, and candies and confectionery are strongly associated with Halloween, how can I provide the mothers a very interesting proposition around Halloween, which they can pick up in their e-commerce platforms, which then takes care of what their kid needs, so that is something that can generate sales from that channel and create a certain positive momentum around it. So that's one example of it. Similarly, finding other ways in which to tap into the channel in the digital space so that you're enhancing your availability. On the other hand, as far as consumers are concerned, I think it's about understanding the consumers and making sure we are where they are. So the gaming example I was giving you, traditional medium like television can be used for generating awareness, which will still continue to do so. But if the teenagers are in their social media, on their Insta platforms and the various other such platforms, it's important that as a brand, we are where the consumer is, and we are able to sort of provide them those inputs in those platforms in the appropriate manner. So it's a question of, I think the fundamentals don't change in terms of deep consumer understanding and translating that understanding into insights, and that insights into certain actions. So that doesn't change. I think the question is, how do you leverage the right balance between the physical medium versus the digital medium in order to enhance both awareness at one level and availability and accessibility at the other level? And I think the brands which are able to do a good job of that are the ones which are likely to succeed.
Yeah. So, I'm we're just coming to the end of our session, and actually, I'm in a dilemma. Should I be asking one more question to each one of you, or should I summarize? But given that you've been so clear about what you wanted to say, I don't think there's need for a summarization of the session. But so I'll go with the first option of asking both of you, if there's one thing, right, you want to ask marketers to stop doing. Yeah, from the business head perspective, both of you head businesses. Obviously, both of you have a marketing background, and if there's one thing that you would like the current day marketers to stop doing, what would that be? So, Nitin, Rajesh, whoever wants to take it first.
So this is a very difficult question. But I think one thing that I keep on telling my colleagues, internally, externally, is that, don't do anything which, does not bring value to your customer or to your organization, right? If there is something which brings tremendous value to the customer, go for it. If it's just a matter of just, a few paisa here and there, in terms of price warrior or, something like that, doesn't really matter to the customer. So build brands which will last decades or generations. Don't build only for the next few years. And in the day and age that we live in, I've seen a lot of marketeers follow in that trap of building Me Too brands, Me Too products, and just doing this cycle after cycle of fundraising, etc., and then burning out, after a few years, right? So don't do anything which is not going to create long-term value. That's going to be what, I think.
Wonderful, Nitin. Rajesh, what would you suggest?
Yeah, I would say, don't, sacrifice the short term for the long term, right? I think it's important to, manage both as marketeers, and stop actually taking consumers for granted. Because very often, we think we know everything, and then we have tend to have a very manufacturer out kind of a perspective. But I think the consumer is far smarter and far more intelligent than we think. And therefore, it's very important to truly understand the consumer needs and then work with that as the fundamental foundation, rather than just assume that this is what they are looking for.
Absolutely, Rajesh and Nitin. I think that was a wonderful panel. We just running short of time. We had at least 3 more questions that we had in mind that we want to put to you, but we will definitely find another time and date on which we can put these questions to you. And you've been a wonderful panelist, and I think I learned a lot. As I said, I have just moved into a CEO role from a marketing role, and one of the things some people were asking me, if I were to tell if I were to reflect on my marketing role, what would that be? If there's anything like that, I would say that I think I've become a better marketer after becoming a CEO, because now I can clearly see what's adding value to the business and what is it, and that sort of resonates with what you said. Thanks again for being on this panel, to both Rajesh Ramakrishnan and Nitin Pasi. You've been a wonderful panelist. Thank you so much. And thanks to CII for giving us the opportunity to share this perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sundar. Thanks, Nitin. And thank you, CIA.
Thank you, Rajesh.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Back to you, Alpa.